After a departure from FDF for me, anyway, for 5 years, I think, we find ourselves sitting next to each other being interviewed about a program
Wow.
I know that you love dearly, and obviously
It's in your heart,
put a
your heart and soul more.
yeah, it's indelibly imprinted
Yes, absolutely.
on my soul without a doubt. Uh, and for me, it was probably one of the greater projects in my life that I ever been involved in. And for that, I'm eternally grateful to everybody that played a role in it.
Well, look at the impact it has.
It's
Has had and continues to have.
and still does, and will I think for a long time. I think
Mhm.
its roots were clearly uh, well placed, and
Absolutely.
uh, it's interesting. We see other areas of the United States trying to have similar programs um, with varying success. Nothing like here, and that's sad because there's no reason why it couldn't be.
Absolutely.
But that's a whole other
Well,
subject.
there's two other FDFs in the country,
Right.
and they have not had the same success as the one out here.
I assume you're talking about Atlanta and New
New
Jersey?
Jersey, yeah.
Atlanta shot itself in the foot, and I don't mind saying it, I'd say to them, by uh, taking away competition in the sense that it was there. The last time I was there was the year they introduced this
New system.
new
yeah.
system. And this might be interesting to you, Christo. I don't know if you've been to the Atlanta FDF. The HDF, yeah. They started out very, very well. Their growth pattern was mimicking ours, full-blown competition, and then through pressure from adults and others who have this idea competition is bad, they eliminated competition.
But they minimized it.
They minimized it. The year I was there was the year they implemented it, and as they were announcing the new categories of us, you would hear the kids around us talking, "This is absurd." It had no meaning, and from that time forward, their growth is really stunted. They have not, and yet the South should be as big as we are. For very much similar reasons. When we were developing FDF, we were also thinking about where could we go out and expand it, and we had actually set aside money. What we thought we would need to promote an FDF in the South. And they got a new bishop, and the new bishop was kind of interested in promoting it, and so they recruited some people, and they did. And they tried to do a lot more with it than was really effective. They tried to add too many church issues. And that if you have two different disciplines. You can have a little church at FDF, but if you try to have the church dominate FDF, one or the other is going to survive, not both. And so they had a smorgasbord of activities that confused really what was the core element of coming. And anyway, it's sad because there's no reason why HDF shouldn't be as big as FDF. Yeah, but
And what can you just say a little bit about the role of judges in bringing people like Christos here to
Well, I
dance?
think, I agree with Peter what he said earlier about the judges being critical to the growth. I think that the judges played two roles. One is not only as educators, as you said, but they also, it forces the development.
Yeah.
There were some, early on, there was people who were just sort of involved in folk dancing, but as FDF grew, FDF started bringing people who really knew Greek dancing, especially in particular, and also on a deeper level than just doing the steps.
Right.
They understood the dance within the context of the culture and in terms of the village life. And that started to shift the FDF performances away from choreographies and elaborate stage moves to a real sort of replicating the village.
Yeah.
When I started getting involved early on, I remember that the second year I was there, they talked about what we wanted to see on stage, and everybody pretty much agreed that we wanted to see the village with a little bit of theater. And the theater is just enough, because when you put it on stage, you have to put something on there. And now I think we've gotten more and more into a lot of the context in the theater in the performances. So there's a lot more props and people, trying to replicate a specific setting, a baptism, a wedding, a taverna scene, something, a Glendy, but really puts it in the context. And I think that the judges have had a lot of influence in moving the dancing in that way. And I also think that by bringing people from Greece, we're bringing people who understand that on a gut level, who understand that context and that village life, and the nuances of the dance within the context. It's not just a dance. The dance has a religious, familial, community significance. And the people who come from Greece have that understanding much more than anybody, who's grown up here has. So we really value the people who come. Plus, they know a lot more than we all do. So, and we love having them. So, the more people we bring from Greece, the better. I mean, we don't always have judges from Greece every year, but I think it's really valuable when they come.
Well, it certainly has made a major contribution in the way the program has grown and developed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And it goes both ways. I think that by having the judges from Greece here, they go back and talk about the experience of FDF in Greece, and we've become known over there, even more known. I mean, Christo and Anna and several people have written articles and talked about the experience of FDF and what it brings to the Greek dance cultural world. I wanted to add something I think very interesting about, you were talking about why we haven't attracted a bigger group from outside of the community. I see a couple of things that happen. One is people they watch So You Think You Can Dance and Americans Got all of that stuff. They want the flash of dancing.
Yes.
The performances and the fancy for the Moiseyev ballet, that type of thing.
Right.
And that's not what FDF has become.
No.
And so it's not as interesting to people who are not into the culture and into that world.
That's a really good point, Ann.
And I wouldn't want it to change for that reason. That's not what we want to do.
We really worked very hard to break the choreography.
Right.
In the early years. In fact, it had gotten so bad where when you were a judge, the judges all sat in a straight line. It was so bad that what we started to do is we'd have a judge here, a judge there, a judge there. So there was no way for a team to dance to the judges. So we deliberately were going to frustrate them from doing that until they got the point that we're not asking you to choreograph. We want you to dance as if you were in the village dancing that dance. And I think we succeeded. We finally did succeed. But it took some manipulation on our part to make that happen. Yeah.
I think that's a big factor in why people.
I think that's a good point.
In the 70s, when I started folk dancing, and I started folk dancing in the late 60s, there were so many people, so many places to folk dance, certainly in Southern California. There were 4 or 5 clubs. You could go folk dancing, any night of the week. Wow. There was a place that had dancing. It wasn't all Greek. It was Balkan, Israeli, Armenian, Turkish, all of that. But those numbers dwindled down in the late 70s, early 80s. It started to dwindle down. And folk dancing is not as big of an attraction and a draw. It was replaced by disco and by people going to the gym, really.
Yeah, that's
and
true.
The people who went, it was a mix of people. There were a lot of what was then Yugoslavians. There were a lot of Greeks. There were non-Greeks that went, Armenians. There was really an international community, that folk dance world. And I mean, having been involved so long, I see it as a loss because I also think FDF would have been a big draw for many of those people to see that.
I just wonder if there was more even awareness of it, if people, because folk dance will come back. I mean, things are cyclical. I think it will at some point.
Well, I have a lot of folk dance friends, and they don't, unless they're involved in the FDF, they don't usually come to FDF. Yeah. And if they're not, and my non-folk dance friends, they think it's kind of this esoteric thing. Yeah. They've never expressed an interest in coming to see it.
it is something you either have to feel it in your heart.
I think so.
Yeah. And it's something about the music. You also have to understand the music because it has a mystery to it. It has there's an esoteric aspect to it. There's a hauntingness about it. At least that's my opinion of describing it. But that music either embraces you, captures you, probably is a better sense. And if it doesn't, then I don't know how you can relate to it. And again, it has nothing to do with bloodline. It either grabs you, or it doesn't.
I think about the two places that I was with Christo this weekend where he taught. I don't think there were any Greeks at all. Maybe one or two, at most. Huh?
One in Laguna Beach, in Tony, in Santiago.
Yeah. A few at Ekipseli, but not very many.
Yeah. Anyway.
And what would you say about Peter and your time that you spent in FDF working with Peter? Can we get you to say something? I know with him sitting here, it's going to be different, but.
Well, I think Peter was the mover and shaker for FDF. I think he had a certain vision that I always think sometimes when I think I would like to see this happen at FDF, and my first thought was if Peter was here, we could make it happen. I think he had an open mind about making changes that would grow the program, that would enhance the program. It was more than just putting on an event. It was the whole way of thinking of it, a way of being in a way. It sort of had its own life.
Good way. It was a way of being. Yeah.
And it involved things that could happen all year long if we wanted it to. The youth leadership program and your goals about that is really remarkable because I think that's very unique. More and more we don't allow kids to take on leadership roles except in very small environment. And I think this was something really, really special. I mean, it still exists, but not to the same.
Not to the same.
Not in the same structured way. Not in that same sort of with leadership in mind. The goal now is just to get the event done, rather than to build the leadership program.
We struggled. We had a program we called the Gold Program, Greek Orthodox Leadership Development. And that was probably one of my great disappointments. We just could not get it off the ground beyond the FDF level. And we we invested a fair amount of money in trying to develop the program. What we needed was adults who believed in it, who would go out and really sponsor it. And we just couldn't get the right adults to back it. And yet, one of the key players, I'm trying to think of her name, from Sacramento, she was the head of the HR for the state of California. I don't think you ever met her. Do you remember her name any chance, Nick? Funny, I can't remember her name. A very impressive lady, also of Greek background, and she helped me design the program. And she brought in some other people who were really knowledgeable about these kinds of things. But we just could not get it launched. And no matter how hard we talked about the importance of developing our young people as leaders, to be prepared to step in to manage the various communities, so that they aren't stepping in a role and operating from the seat of the pants or making the same mistakes that their predecessors were making. And I found that was one of the things that was sad, that we just didn't really launch it